My friend testified to ruin my reputation. She thought I'd be too scared to fight back. Until one video changed everything. I'm 26, and until 6 months ago I considered Leah one of my closest friends. We'd known each other since college, where we studied communications together and built what I thought was a genuine friendship based on mutual support and shared interests. After graduation, we both landed jobs in the same city and maintained our friendship through regular dinners, movie nights, and weekend adventures that filled our social media with happy memories. Leah worked as a social media coordinator for a nonprofit organization, while I found my calling as an event planner for corporate clients. Our careers were complementary rather than competitive, which I thought helped our friendship remain free from professional jealousy. We'd often help each other with work projects, sharing contacts, and collaborating on events that required both our skill sets. What I didn't realize until much later was that Leah had always harbored resentment about what she perceived as my advantages in life. She came from a working-class family and had to take out significant student loans to attend college, while my parents were able to help with my education expenses. She saw my financial stability and career success as unfair privileges rather than acknowledging the hard work and strategic choices that had contributed to my professional achievements. The first signs of trouble appeared when I started dating Connor, a successful attorney who worked at a prestigious law firm downtown. Leah seemed enthusiastic about our relationship, initially asking detailed questions about Connor's work and social connections. But gradually her comments became more pointed and cynical, suggesting that I was lucky to have found someone so financially secure. Connor and I had been together for about 8 months when we decided to move in together. It was a natural progression in our relationship, and we were both excited about taking that step. But Leah's reaction was surprisingly negative, as she made comments about how quickly things were moving and whether I was making decisions based on love or financial convenience. The situation that would eventually destroy our friendship began when Connor's law firm was hired to defend a small tech startup called Velocity Systems against allegations of workplace discrimination. The case involved a former employee who claimed she'd been passed over for promotions due to gender bias and had been subjected to a hostile work environment. Connor was part of the legal team working to prove that the company's decisions had been based on legitimate business considerations rather than discriminatory practices. As Connor worked on the case, he would occasionally discuss general legal strategies and challenges with me during our evening conversations. I was interested in his work and enjoyed hearing about the intellectual aspects of building a defense case. But our discussions were always general in nature, and Connor was careful never to share confidential client information or specific details about witnesses and evidence. What I didn't know was that Leah had applied for a marketing position at Velocity Systems several months earlier and had been rejected after what she felt was a promising interview process. She'd mentioned the rejection briefly at the time, but I hadn't connected it to Connor's case, since she'd only referred to the company by its nickname rather than its full legal name. The connection became clear when Leah learned about Connor's involvement in defending Velocity Systems and realized that this was the same company that had rejected her job application. Instead of seeing it as a coincidence, she became convinced that Connor and I had somehow influenced the hiring decision or had inside information that we'd used to her disadvantage. Leah's behavior toward Connor and me became increasingly hostile as she developed elaborate theories about how we'd sabotaged her career opportunities. She started making accusations that Connor had provided me with confidential information about Velocity Systems that I'd used to damage her prospects with the company. Her claims were completely unfounded, but she seemed genuinely convinced that we'd conspired against her. I tried to explain to Leah that Connor and I had no influence over Velocity Systems' hiring decisions and that we'd never even discussed her job application because I hadn't realized she was referring to the same company. But she was so convinced of her conspiracy theory that she dismissed my explanations as lies designed to cover up our supposed wrongdoing. The friendship became increasingly strained as Leah's accusations grew more elaborate and paranoid. She claimed that Connor and I were part of a network of privileged people who used insider information to advance our own interests while deliberately sabotaging others. She seemed to view my relationship with Connor as evidence of my participation in some kind of elite conspiracy, rather than recognizing it as a normal romantic relationship. Things reached a breaking point when Leah demanded that Connor withdraw from the Velocity Systems case as proof that he wasn't using his position to harm her career prospects. When Connor rightfully refused to abandon his professional obligations based on Leah's unfounded accusations, she declared that our friendship was over and that she would find ways to expose what she called our corrupt behavior. I was heartbroken by the loss of what I thought was a genuine friendship, but I also couldn't understand how Leah had become so consumed by paranoid theories about Connor and me. Her accusations were not only false, but they demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of legal ethics and professional boundaries that made meaningful communication impossible. 6 weeks after Leah ended our friendship, I learned that she had contacted the plaintiff's attorneys in the Velocity Systems case and offered to provide testimony against the company. She claimed to have inside information about discriminatory practices and alleged that Connor had revealed confidential details about the defense strategy that proved the company's guilt. Her accusations were completely fabricated, but they created a serious ethical crisis for Connor and his law firm. The plaintiff's attorneys were eager to hear Leah's testimony because any evidence of defense misconduct could significantly strengthen their case. They scheduled a formal deposition where Leah would provide sworn testimony about her allegations. Connor's firm was required to investigate the claims immediately, and Connor was temporarily removed from the case pending the outcome of their internal review. Leah's deposition testimony was a masterpiece of manipulation and strategic deception. She claimed that Connor had shared confidential client information with me during casual conversations and that I had encouraged him to sabotage the plaintiff's case through unethical means. She provided detailed accounts of supposed conversations that had never occurred and presented herself as a whistleblower exposing corruption in the legal system. What made Leah's testimony particularly damaging was her ability to weave true facts with fabricated details in ways that sounded credible to people who didn't know her personally. She correctly identified aspects of Connor's work schedule and general information about the case that she could have learned from public sources. But she embedded these facts within elaborate lies about private conversations and unethical behavior that never occurred. Leah also portrayed herself as an innocent victim who had discovered our supposed wrongdoing accidentally and felt morally obligated to report it despite the personal cost to our friendship. She claimed that she'd tried to convince me to persuade Connor to behave more ethically, but that I'd been corrupted by the financial benefits of our relationship and had chosen loyalty over justice. The most devastating aspect of Leah's testimony was her claim that Connor and I had specifically discussed strategies for discrediting female witnesses in discrimination cases. She alleged that Connor had bragged about techniques for making women appear emotional and unreliable during testimony. This accusation was particularly damaging because it played into existing concerns about gender bias in legal proceedings. Connor's law firm took the allegations extremely seriously and launched a comprehensive investigation that included reviewing his phone records, email communications, and work computer activity. They also interviewed colleagues and clients to determine whether there was any evidence supporting Leah's claims. The investigation was thorough and invasive, affecting not only Connor's career, but also our personal relationship. I was also drawn into the investigation as Connor's firm tried to determine whether I had received confidential information or had participated in any unethical activities. I had to provide detailed accounts of my conversations with Connor and submit to questioning about my knowledge of the Velocity Systems case. The experience was humiliating and stressful as I tried to prove the absence of wrongdoing that had never occurred. The stress of the investigation put enormous strain on Connor's career and our relationship. He was suspended from work pending the outcome of the review, which meant losing income and facing potential disciplinary action from the State Bar Association. His reputation within the firm was damaged even though the allegations were unfounded and his future prospects were uncertain. Meanwhile, Leah was enjoying attention from the plaintiff's legal team and advocacy groups who viewed her as a brave whistleblower exposing corruption in the legal system. She gave interviews to legal publications and appeared at conferences discussing the importance of holding attorneys accountable for ethical violations. Her false accusations had transformed her into a celebrated figure in certain circles. The most frustrating aspect of the situation was that Leah's lies were being taken seriously by people who had no way of knowing her true character or motivations. She'd crafted her story carefully to appeal to legitimate concerns about legal ethics and gender discrimination. Her testimony sounded credible to people who wanted to believe that such misconduct was occurring. As the investigation dragged on for weeks, Connor and I realized that simply denying Leah's accusations might not be sufficient to clear our names. Her testimony was detailed and strategic, and she'd positioned herself as having no motive to lie other than moral conviction. We needed concrete evidence to prove that her claims were fabricated, but we weren't sure such evidence existed. The turning point came when I remembered something that Leah had apparently forgotten in her eagerness to destroy our reputations with false testimony. During our friendship, she'd often recorded videos on her phone during our social gatherings and had shared many of those recordings on social media or in group chats with other friends. I realized that some of those recordings might provide evidence contradicting her sworn testimony. After the initial shock of Leah's false testimony wore off, I became determined to find evidence that would expose her lies and clear Connor's name. I started by carefully reviewing her deposition transcript to identify specific claims that could potentially be contradicted by digital evidence. She'd provided detailed accounts of conversations that supposedly occurred during specific social gatherings where I knew she'd been actively recording videos on her phone. The most promising lead came from Leah's claim that Connor had discussed unethical defense strategies during a dinner party at our apartment in early March. According to her testimony, Connor had bragged about techniques for discrediting female witnesses and had shared confidential details about the Velocity Systems case while other friends were present. I remembered that evening clearly because Leah had been documenting the entire night on her phone for her social media stories. I reached out to friends who had attended that dinner party and asked if they had saved any of Leah's social media content from that evening. Most people don't keep temporary social media stories, but I hoped that someone might have screenshots or screen recordings of particularly funny or memorable moments. My friend Jasmine remembered saving a video because she thought it was amusing how much Leah was filming during dinner. The video that Jasmine had saved was a 15-minute compilation that Leah had posted to her Instagram story showing highlights from our dinner party. The footage included conversations around the dinner table and clearly captured Connor discussing his work in general terms while being careful not to reveal any confidential information. More importantly, the video showed Connor deflecting Leah's attempts to get him to discuss specific cases or clients. In the video, Connor could be heard saying, "I can't really talk about active cases, but in general civil litigation involves a lot of strategic thinking about how to present evidence effectively." When Leah pressed him for more details about his current cases, he responded, "You know, I can't discuss client matters. That would be a violation of attorney-client privilege." His professionalism and ethical behavior were clearly documented in Leah's own recording. The video also captured Leah's obvious frustration with Connor's refusal to share confidential information. She made several attempts to get him to discuss the Velocity Systems case specifically, but he consistently declined to provide any details. At one point she said, "Come on, Connor, we're all friends here. You can tell us what you really think about that discrimination case." His response was firm and clear, "I really can't discuss it, and honestly shouldn't even confirm which cases I'm working on." Most damaging to Leah's credibility was a segment where she complained openly about not getting the marketing job at Velocity Systems. She said, "I interviewed there a few months ago and thought it went really well, but they rejected me for some random reason. I bet they had internal candidates already picked out and were just going through the motions with external interviews." This directly contradicted her later claims that she hadn't known about Connor's involvement with the company. The video also showed Connor's sympathetic response to Leah's job rejection. He said, "That's really frustrating. The hiring process can be so arbitrary sometimes. I'm sure you'll find something even better that's a better fit for your skills." There was nothing in his response that suggested any knowledge of her application or any involvement in the company's hiring decisions. I immediately contacted Connor's defense attorney and shared the video evidence. She was thrilled to have concrete proof contradicting Leah's sworn testimony and began preparing a comprehensive response to the allegations. The video not only proved that Leah had lied about specific conversations, but also established that Connor had behaved ethically and professionally throughout the evening in question. The legal team also identified several other inconsistencies between Leah's testimony and the video evidence. She'd claimed that I had encouraged Connor to share confidential information, but the video clearly showed me changing the subject whenever work topics came up. She'd also alleged that Connor had made derogatory comments about female clients, but the recording showed him speaking respectfully about all his professional relationships. Armed with this evidence, Connor's attorney requested a meeting with the plaintiff's legal team to present the contradictory material. She explained that they had video proof that key aspects of Leah's testimony were fabricated and that continuing to rely on her allegations could expose them to sanctions for presenting false evidence to the court. The plaintiff's attorneys were shocked to learn that Leah's testimony was contradicted by her own social media content. They'd built significant portions of their case around her allegations and hadn't anticipated that such clear evidence of her dishonesty would emerge. They immediately began reconsidering their reliance on her testimony and started investigating whether other aspects of her claims were similarly fabricated. Meanwhile, Connor's law firm conducted their own review of the video evidence and quickly concluded that the allegations against Connor were unfounded. They reinstated him to full duty and issued a formal statement clearing him of any ethical violations. The State Bar Association also closed their investigation after reviewing the contradictory evidence. But I wasn't satisfied with simply clearing Connor's name. Leah had committed perjury by providing false testimony under oath and had attempted to destroy an innocent person's career through deliberate lies. I wanted to ensure that she faced consequences for her actions and couldn't continue using false allegations to harm other people in the future. The revelation that Leah's own social media video contradicted her sworn testimony created an immediate crisis for everyone who had relied on her allegations. The plaintiff's attorneys in the Velocity Systems case were forced to withdraw her testimony and publicly acknowledge that key evidence in their case had been fabricated. The judges overseeing Connor's ethical review expressed serious concerns about Leah's credibility and recommended that prosecutors investigate potential perjury charges. When confronted with the video evidence, Leah initially tried to claim that the recording had been edited or taken out of context. She suggested that Connor and I had somehow manipulated the footage to make it appear that conversations had occurred differently than she remembered. But digital forensics experts confirmed that the video was authentic and unaltered, showing exactly what had happened during our dinner party. Leah's credibility collapsed completely when investigators discovered that she'd saved the original video files on her own phone and had posted additional clips from the same evening on multiple social media platforms. Her own digital footprint provided overwhelming evidence that her testimony had been deliberately false rather than based on misremembered conversations or misunderstood interactions. The perjury investigation moved quickly once prosecutors realized they had clear evidence of false testimony. Leah was charged with perjury in the first degree for knowingly providing false information under oath with the intent to influence legal proceedings. The charges carried potential jail time and would permanently damage her professional reputation and career prospects. During the criminal proceedings, additional evidence emerged showing that Leah had planned her false testimony carefully rather than acting impulsively. Investigators found social media posts and text messages where she discussed strategies for damaging Connor's reputation and had researched legal procedures for filing ethics complaints against attorneys. Her actions were premeditated rather than emotionally driven. The most devastating evidence against Leah came from her own phone records, which showed that she'd researched Connor's involvement in the Velocity Systems case weeks before claiming to have discovered it accidentally. She'd used social media and professional networking sites to gather information about his work and had specifically targeted him for false allegations based on her resentment about the job rejection. Leah's employer at the nonprofit organization was horrified to learn that one of their staff members had committed perjury and had deliberately tried to destroy someone's career through false accusations. They terminated her employment immediately and issued a public statement distancing the organization from her actions. Her professional reputation was destroyed completely. The video evidence also revealed the extent of Leah's manipulation and dishonesty in our personal relationship. Friends who viewed the footage could see how she'd consistently tried to extract confidential information from Connor while presenting herself as just making friendly conversation. Her behavior throughout our friendship had been more calculated and strategic than anyone had realized. Connor's law firm used the case as an example of why attorneys must be extremely careful about maintaining professional boundaries even in social settings. They incorporated Leah's attempted manipulation into their ethics training programs as a cautionary tale about people who might try to exploit personal relationships to gain access to confidential information. The plaintiff's attorneys in the Velocity Systems case were forced to completely restructure their arguments after losing Leah's testimony. Their case was significantly weakened by the revelation that a key witness had committed perjury, and they eventually reached a settlement that was much less favorable than what they'd originally sought. The case became a cautionary tale about the importance of thoroughly vetting witness credibility. Leah was ultimately convicted of perjury and sentenced to 6 months in jail plus 2 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to Connor for the legal fees and career damage caused by her false allegations. The conviction meant that she would have a permanent criminal record that would make future employment in communications or marketing extremely difficult. The impact on Leah's life was comprehensive and long-lasting. Her criminal conviction made her unemployable in her chosen field, and she was forced to leave the city where she'd built her career and social connections. The friends who'd initially supported her as a whistleblower abandoned her once they learned about the perjury conviction and the deliberate nature of her false accusations. Most satisfying to me was watching Leah's transformation from celebrated whistleblower to convicted perjurer happen so quickly and completely. The same legal publications that had interviewed her about ethics and accountability ran follow-up stories about her conviction and the dangers of false testimony. Her brief moment of fame became a permanent source of professional shame. Connor and I emerged from the experience with a stronger relationship and a deeper appreciation for the importance of maintaining clear boundaries between personal and professional life. We'd learned that even close friendships could hide resentment and manipulation that might not become apparent until someone felt they had nothing left to lose. The case also taught me valuable lessons about the power of digital evidence in modern disputes. Leah's downfall came directly from her own social media activity, which provided irrefutable proof that her testimony was false. In an age where people document their lives constantly online, those records can become powerful tools for establishing truth when someone tries to rewrite history through false allegations. Looking back, I'm grateful that Leah made the mistake of targeting Connor and me with her false accusations. Her lies were so elaborate and malicious that they motivated us to fight back aggressively rather than simply accepting damage to our reputations. If she'd been more subtle or had targeted someone with fewer resources to defend themselves, she might have succeeded in destroying innocent people's lives through perjury. The experience showed me that sometimes the best response to false accusations is not just to deny them, but to actively investigate and expose the truth. Leah thought she could destroy our reputations because she assumed we'd be too intimidated or too trusting to fight back effectively. She learned too late that some people won't accept being victimized by lies and will use every available tool to expose dishonesty and seek justice.